Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Lightning Talks. My name's Dan. This is Fatima. We're your Lightning Talk chairs. We're very excited to have 8 Lightning Talk speakers presenting this evening, followed by Lightning Talk Karaoke, which Fatima will explain a little bit more about.
Lightning Talk Karaoke is really fun. If you were here at LISA 2019, I did Lightning Talk Karaoke in Portland, and everyone said it is the best thing they've ever done in their life. So, Laura has made lovely slides for us. They're totally random. I don't know what's on them. You don't know what's on them. If you're interested in doing a talk about slides that you've never seen in your life, then after our last Lightning Talk speaker, we're going to ask people to line up on the edge here, and you get to do a talk. There's 10 Lightning Talk Karaoke presentations set up. So it's first come, first serve. If more than 10 people line up, you don't get to do one. But if less than 10 people sign up, then some of you might have to go twice. So those slides will be 6 slides, and each one is 15 seconds long. So every time you see a slide change on this little TV, you have to talk about it for 15 seconds, and then it'll change. So if you want to do that, it will be fun. If you don't want to do it, you'll get to watch, and it'll be funny. Okay, so without further ado, our first scheduled Lightning Talk speaker, Lerna.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Lerna Ekmekcioglu. I'm a solution architect with AWS, and today's talk is all my own, so thoughts and opinions are my own and do not belong to my employer. And this is just the cryptography you need to know for TLS. So we'll get started soon. Okay. Okay, all right. So John and Ben, they want to share sensitive data over public channels, and they want to ensure that they're talking to the intended person, and they want to prevent the other person from denying their prior actions. They want to prevent eavesdroppers from reading the contents of the message, and they want to detect tampering of the message by active attackers, such as George in this case. So confidentiality and message integrity is what they want. Well, we can give them confidentiality using symmetric key encryption. That's when we encrypt and decrypt using the same key. Caesar did this 2,000 years ago. Today, we use AES. We know better. So how do John and Ben securely share the symmetric key? Well, for that, we can use public key cryptography. So we're going to generate a key pair, a public key, and a private key. Next, we're going to look at an analogy for that, and I'm going to take a breath. All right, so John has a combination lock, and he has a secret combination that he keeps secret to himself. John shares his unlocked combination lock with Ben. Ben is going to put his secret message in a box and lock it with John's lock. John is going to open the lock using his combination and retrieve Ben's message. So the combination is the private key for John, and the unlocked combination lock is his public key. He's encrypting using public key, Ben is, and John is decrypting using his private key. So why don't we just use public key cryptography? Well, it is really slow, so we're going to use it to securely establish the symmetric key, and we're going to use it for authenticating the two parties, and we'll use symmetric key cryptography specifically for confidentiality and message integrity. So here's an analogy for Diffie-Hellman key exchange. This is to securely establish the symmetric key. So John and Ben agree on a common base color. They have a secret color that's their private key. They're going to mix these two colors together, and they're going to share this mixture publicly with each other. So they receive the other person's public key, that's the mixture that they received. They're going to mix it with their own secret color, that's their private key, and they're going to arrive at the same exact color, which is their symmetric key. How do we ensure that we're really talking to the real John and to the real Ben? Well, we have trusted third parties like the DMV, and they issue certificates such that they bind the identity of the person to the public key. And they digitally sign these certificates as proof of authenticity. So here we have the server. Server has its private key and public cert. And as part of authentication, server is going to present its certificate to the client, and the client is going to verify the authenticity of the certificate by verifying that it's digitally signed by a trusted cert according to the trusted certs in its trust store. So that's authentication in TLS 1.2 after the hellos. And for mutual authentication, optionally, the client will present its certificate to the server, and the server is going to do the same thing by verifying that it's an authentic cert according to the certificates in its trust store, which contains the certificates for the CAs. So once they're done with the authentication piece in TLS, they're going to go into establishing the symmetric key. For that, they're each going to contribute to the session key together using something similar to Diffie-Hellman key exchange that we talked about earlier. That was an analogy, though. They're not going to use colors. So once they're done, they're going to be able to establish that session key that they're going to use for encryption. So now they can stop talking to each other over plain text, so George is no longer going to be able to decrypt this West Point map that Ben is going to share with John. In TLS 1.2, in addition to all of this, they talk much less, so it's much less interesting over Wireshark, but they encrypt much earlier. So including the certificates will be encrypted. It's faster and more secure. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, another title slide. I actually think that I have too many slides with just one title or a screenshot. So let's see how this goes. Title of this talk is Metrics Have a Developer Experience Problem. My name is Mies. I am the founder and CEO of a company called Fiberplane, where we're doing collaborative notebooks for DevOps and SREs. I'm not going to talk about Fiberplane today, but feel free to check it out. And I was previously at Oracle. So the question that we've been asking ourselves is, how do you know if your users are actually having a good experience? And the answer is logs. That's a way to check that out. We all love console logging our stuff, but not super great to debug, as we all kind of know. This is one example of logs. The problem with logs, as you just saw, it's too much data to actually understand. They are actually quite expensive to process and store. And why are we serializing everything into strings? So can we get more and useful and better insights than using logs? And there are two other things at our disposal, which we'll see in a bit. And we'll zoom into one specifically, which is metrics. Metrics are pretty good, and we'll see in a bit why they're good. Next slide. I know. So yeah, metrics, the good stuff. So we can actually measure stuff. Great. We can do counters, histograms, all of that. They're actually cheaper than logs. Don't know about 10x, but definitely cheaper. But it also has some downsides. So knowing what and how to count is tricky. You need to figure all of that out. You need to actually write code to instrument all your functions and applications. And querying stuff is quite hard. So we asked ourselves, can we have a sort of more developer-focused approach to metrics that would be trivial to add? That you don't need to think about what to collect and what metric type. Maybe even explore that from your IDE and close to your functions where you have a mental model of your app. So the answer that we came up with is called Autometrics, a fun and easy way to understand your code's performance in production. We leverage macros or metaprogramming to implement that. Here are some more features of Autometrics. It actually writes Prometheus queries for you without knowing PromQL, and it also generates alerts and even dashboards coming soon. This is kind of what it looks like. So this is VS Code with Prometheus next to it. This is Rust code, by the way. We love Rust, and we use a lot of Rust. I decorated my create user function with the Autometrics macro. Then I get a tooltip inside of VS Code, and it automatically gives me the request rate, error rate, latency, but even also the functions that would be called by the create user function. I can click on these things, and then subsequently actually get a, in this case, Prometheus chart back with the production metrics or localhost metrics, depending on what you've attached it to. inside VS Code. So that's great. What's next for Autometrics? We are doing more language implementation, so Python, TypeScript, Golang, even Ruby. We're adding SLOs and alerting, and we have some discussions going on if we should support OpenTelemetry or Open Metrics conventions. On to the next.
Hey everybody, I'm a CRE with Noble9, an SLO-based company, and we're going to talk to you about SLOs a little bit here and different things I've found when people adopt SLOs and some patterns and anti-patterns. So first off, you want to measure what matters to users. These are customer journeys and interactions. You don't want to measure CPU utilization or disk I/O. That's not really meaningful, and it's not really impactful to, hey, what's going on. Next, you want to generally provide as much data as you can, and that's high fidelity. You don't want to average your queries or do percentiles or do any types of sums. Get everything over to your SLO or your observability source, and then do your filtering and stuff there. Next up is success rates. Define what success is and leave everything else. Let everything else be uncertain. Defining bad behavior might be easier, but it has a limited scope, and it only lets you know of problems you're already aware of. Next, you want to look back to look forward. How many times have you heard someone said, all our services need 5 nines of reliability? No, you probably don't. You should look back and see, oh, hey, what are benchmarks achievable metrics that we could actually hit? What are reliability targets that are actually more meaningful to our users of these services? You also want to, when looking back, you also want to try to figure out and capture, hey, does this SLI capture activity that we expect? Especially if you're trying to create an SLO after an incident. And you could then, once you have that, you can then start saying, oh, hey, let's try to calculate an error budget for this. What is an appropriate objective? Hey, when would I have been alerted? Next, observability without action is just storage. SLOs aren't just to be set and forgotten about. They're things that are living and breathing. You should change them and modify them as you make new changes to your code base and to push out new features. And you should probably take automated action when necessary, especially if you're trying to hit a high level, high reliability targets in 3, 4, or 5 nines. You can't depend upon humans to do that. Likewise, when doing so, when you do depend on humans, you should only alert and page when necessary, preferably not at 3 a.m. Next, different time windows for different folks. SLOs aren't just for SREs. Different groups take different actions towards improving and increasing the reliability of a product. Generally you want to have the same SLI there, but you have different time windows that are associated with them. Generally for SRE and ops folks, we're talking 24, 48-hour rolling windows. For dev teams, something aligned to their whatever sprint cadence is, 14 days or 2-week calendars. And then for leadership and architecture, monthly or quarterly line ones. Who has seen a dashboard like that? It is terrible. It lacks a lot of context and information there. When you're looking at these things, you need to have annotations and badges. You want to annotate when we did a deploy, when we declared an incident, when the incident was declared over. Likewise, you need badges for, hey, when was the last time someone did this? When did it need to be reviewed again? And you also need to map your dependencies up, down, and across to your different teams and different services there. Take a breath. Next, you need to document your SLOs. How many times has someone looked at a dashboard and said, what is this service? Who's responsible for it? Where is it deployed? How do I fix it? Why is this metric important? You need to document the who, what, when, where, how, why of an SLO's existence. And likewise, in doing so, you need to have these tracked and versioned along with your SLO definitions and also the why of that SLO as well, preferably all in Markdown, if possible, to be pushed along right along with the PR. So in closing here, your problems aren't unique. Don't operate in a silo. There's lots of other communities to help you out. Embrace open standards such as OpenSLO, Slow DLC, or R9Y Dev. There's a lot of talented people there with lots of great opinions to try to help guide along the reliability conversation. And with that, hey, if you liked SLOs, check out Noble9. It's kind of neat. And then if you really like SLOs as well and interested in documenting the process, check out Slow DLC and join the community and let us know. And with that.
Okay, hi, my name is Nele, and the next 4 minutes you're forced to watch my photography. And besides taking pictures, I'm actually a developer advocate at Fiberplane. And you already listened that we do autometrics at Fiberplane, but besides that, we build a tool to collaboratively debug your infrastructure. And that looks like this. So the idea is basically to pull in multiple data sources, and you have a single point of view when you are debugging your infrastructure or when you handle incidents. But I'm also not here to talk about this, because the best tool is useless if you are working in a culture that is blaming when it comes to incident handling. And there are basically two main problems when we think of a blaming culture. And the first one actually is that people in a blaming culture normally don't like to speak up. So if there is a mistake, they don't like to talk about the mistake or the error, and also it's a lot about delegation instead of fixing the error or taking action and responsibility. And the second main issue that I see is that the focus of those companies also is shifting. Instead of focusing on how can we prevent this incident and error to happen in the future, the focus of those companies often is who is responsible and who to blame for. And that is that is not helpful when we want to investigate an incident and handle incidents. But why are we still talking about that? Because there's a lot of resources out there that you should not work in a blaming culture when it comes to incident handling. But it's not that given, or a blameless culture is not really given, and that really has to deal with history and our own understanding what a mistake is and how we perceive it. And I just like to take you back into school, because we all go to school, I think. And in school, we already learned what a mistake is and what it means to make a mistake. Because at the end of a year, you probably got a grade. And the grade were based on tests you wrote in school. And in a test, you normally learn the more mistakes you make, the worse the grade gets. And just a side note, imagine a school that would not make the grade based on the mistakes you make in a test, but also sees how you improve mistakes afterwards. But that's really important to understand, that we all have our own perception when it comes to mistakes and errors. And the first step in creating a blameless culture is actually unlearning own patterns. So unlearn your own patterns and be aware where they come from. The second step that is needed is an organization that supports those. And that goes beyond incident handling. So, for example, you should think of an organization, for example, where leaders lead by example and also talk about failure. Another thing to think about it would be actually to see what it means to get a promotion. Is it just like, or is there a way that people also are rewarded for talking about failure? And then lastly, if those two things are in an okay shape, we can then start talking about tools, because there are great tools out there that support handling incidents and that give you the right methods to do so. And if you look into those tools, I think the most important things actually is to find tools that enable collaboration, but also transparency among different teams. So you all have the single view and you all see what's going on when you are talking about your incident. And well, in the end, I think it's not so easy to create this blameless culture, but if you want to have a recipe, I think those are the 3 steps. Be aware of the patterns that you have yourself. Look into the organization and how the organization can support unlearning and also rewarding failure. And then lastly, look into the tools you can use to support this. And then I hope every organization can end with a sentence that failure is no one's fault, but an opportunity to learn and grow. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Robert. I'm from IBM. I'm very excited to be here. This is not my first time speaking at SREcon, but it's my first time being here physically, so this is very special to me. And I wanted to bring a special friend of mine, a literary hero of mine, Sherlock Holmes, from whom I think we can learn a lot of SRE lessons. There are a lot of iterations of Sherlock Holmes over time. Some of you might know these people. Some of you have a favorite Sherlock Holmes. And I think you can agree that he fits into the CNCF landscape. But unlike the complexity, Sherlock Holmes is here to make our lives simpler. And what do I mean by simpler, and how can Holmes make us better SREs? Well, that's because Holmes is an SRE himself. He solves crimes, we solve incidents. He finds clues, we find anomalies and patterns. He has his tools, we have ours. Clients are clients. His postmortems are different from ours, but otherwise everything is the same. So one of the most famous quotations from Sherlock Holmes is, "You see, but you do not observe." And what he means by that is you collect a lot of information, but you don't get the right insights out of it. You're overloaded by the knowledge you have, but you don't do the proper analysis of it. And what you need to do is to be able to tease out the right information from all the facts available so that you know what's important and what can be ignored. And once you do that, you can start looking at anomalies. And the most famous anomaly in literature is that of the dog that did not bark in the middle of the night. Spoiler alert, because the criminal was his owner. And if we take these incidents, we can start doing data-driven decisions. Holmes was always insistent that you can't come up with theories just by guessing and by what you want to be true. You need to be able to back up everything you're doing with the facts that you have and change your theories to fit the facts. If you don't do that, then you end up with root cause analysis, where you have one thing that you're doing, and there's nothing more deceptive than one fact or one cause that created an incident. And in order to resolve incidents properly, you need to be able to backtrack over time to create the timeline of what happened, what were the various causes that led towards the incident occurring. Not only that, when you've done that, you can then use the knowledge that you've gained to logic to exclude whatever is impossible, could not have happened, is actually now going to be the truth, is going to be the cause of the incident that you know about. And you're not doing this from first principles. By every incident, every crime from the beginning, you're going to be learning based on your record of all the previous things that you've done or other people have done in your organization. And one of the misconceptions about Holmes is that he's a loner, a 10x developer who doesn't care about anyone else. No, communication, collaboration was very important to Sherlock Holmes. And not only that, he was very insistent that it was everyone's responsibility to participate in bringing the criminal to justice, to resolving the incident together, no matter where you might be in the organization. And in order to do that, he was also very insistent that leadership, soft skills were important. He raised people up. He helped them become better investigators, better SREs themselves. It wasn't enough for him just to solve problems himself. He wanted other people to be able to solve problems better. And education was very, very important. It's a series of lessons, just like this conference. And the greatest is this lightning talks at the end of the day, the greatest lesson of the day. So I think we've seen in this lightning talk all the things we can learn from Sherlock Holmes. I'm actually very excited about this talk. I'm starting a series of blogs, articles. I used to write about space exploration in SRE. I'm going to start writing a little bit about Sherlock Holmes. Thank you very much.
Hey everyone, I have a small request for you, and that is that you don't take pictures or post the pictures of my slides, and you'll understand why in a second here. So, I love sleeping. I really, is one of my favorite things in the world, and I love sleeping in on a Saturday morning. So when my wife and I were getting ready to have our first kid, she was concerned that I wouldn't be able to wake up in the middle of the night and take care of our child. I was shocked and offended when she said this to me because I have been carrying a pager for 20 years now, and I am very used to getting up in the middle of the night when something is screaming at or for me. So, as I was taking care of this kid over the past year, I was thinking about some of the other parallels and ways that SRE prepared me to be a new father. And the first thing they told us in the recovery area after the maternity ward was if it's screaming, it's breathing. Which, as a parallel to SRE, when your pager goes off, you need to take a deep breath, be calm. You don't need to panic. You know, the world's not on fire. You need to approach the incident with some calm. And so With children, so for me, I often when I get paged, I look at it and I see if the graph is actually recovering already and I can go back to sleep. And if it's not, then I will get ready, get up, go to the bathroom, have a glass of water, and then start troubleshooting it. The same is true for a child. When it wakes up in the middle of the night, you can give it a second. And in fact, you're supposed to give it a second. You have to let it maybe try and go back to sleep on its own, and then you try and fix it. With children, it's almost always DNS. By which I mean, diapers, nourishment, or a sleep regression. So if it's not one of those things, it's good to bring in your secondary on-call, which is hopefully you have one and they're sleeping in the other room and you can be like, I don't know what's wrong with it. Just like a secondary on-call can be very useful when you're working with servers. Also, if you can't figure it out, you should escalate, right? We have a dev team maybe we might call, or you have a manager you might involve. For us, we had the nurse helpline at the hospital when we couldn't figure out what to do. You can call them and they will tell you it's probably fine. Finally, something we do a lot in SRE is really clear handoffs. You have a Slack message or something at the end of your shift where you say, hey, this is how things went. When you're handing off to your partner, as a new parent, you have to make sure that, when was the last time you changed a diaper? When was the last time they had a bottle? That sort of thing. We also have metrics, right? So we're used to dealing with requests per second, but we might now have to deal with things like number of ounces of milk has been drank in the past day. All, of course, very important. You can oversample, though. I called the nurse helpline and was like, hey, I have this great Prometheus graph for my baby's weight, and it doesn't seem to be going up. And they're like, your sampling rate is way too high. Don't weigh him every time you change a diaper. You should probably do it once a week. So lesson learned there. A few things are different about having a baby. First, you can't turn them off and back on again. And second, I think many of us have worked at a company where we experienced a Reddit hug, but that is nothing compared to a hug from a real kid.
Hello. Hey, hi. So my name is Prathamesh and I'm SRE at Last9. By SRE, what I mean is that I'm just a service restart engineer. I keep restarting services. So today I'm going to talk about how to make your Golang applications observable. So we had a lot of HTTP Golang APIs where there were tons of endpoints and we were keep adding endpoints every day. And we already saw that metrics are good, so we decided to go with metrics. So this is a 15 seconds attempt to explain what red metrics are. They are really good. So basically we'll cover the rate, error, and duration metrics. They will help us understand how our system is behaving and understand health of the system very easily. We also did not want to fall into the trap of the cardinality because that somehow just happens with every system, right? So we also had a lot of endpoints which had dynamic parameters, and we did not want to fall into the same trap. Also, we did not want to have metrics which are written for every handler differently. So we wanted to have a centralized place where people can just hook into the middleware or something like that, and that will emit the required metrics. We did not want to have to maintain it for every particular endpoint. So that's how the Last9 CDK was born. This is one way of emitting commonly aggregated metrics such as red metrics from your Golang applications with a very small piece of code. So the way we observe the red metrics is basically we do it via histogram, and it has some default labels as well, such as the per metric, per label, hostname, domain, and all that. We'll see details of those labels in the next slide. So the per label is the most important label. What it does is that it has the information about what the route is, and it hooks into the router library that you're already using and try to extract the information of the route that you're trying to hit from that information itself, okay? Every company eventually turns or has a chance to turn into a SaaS app. So we already support you tenant and cluster labels as well. You can have a per tenant label that you can define based on the route parameters. And we also have a extra metric for cluster. So the architecture looks something like this. You have the Golang API, a few lines of code from the CDK, exposes metrics on /metrics, and you can scrape it via the Prometheus. And then it is available for doing like a lot of other stuff that you can do. So this is how it works. You just have to include the HTTP metrics package and then add a line for your existing router or handler, which is called, like the middleware is called as red handler. The name says itself that it will emit the red metrics. But that is not the only case, right? Because you may want to like override the default labels for tenant and cluster and few other labels as well. So we also give you a label maker using which you can override certain labels based on the actual parameters that you have in your named routes. We already support PAT, the defaults, Mux, Chi, as well as Gorilla. So if you're using any one of these routers and you use that one particular line, it will automatically figure out the correct labels and start emitting the metrics without facing the cardinality issue. Sometimes you may also want to write some custom logic for a particular HTTP handler. So we also support a different middleware called as custom red handler, using which you can define basically like labels for a particular custom handler. We also have a SQL metrics middleware using which you can figure out what is the particular query that is being run, as well as the table name and schema details and so on. And in future, we want to support MySQL driver for the SQL metrics middleware. We currently support only the Postgres using the PQ library. Want to add support for custom labels and other languages and frameworks. So we already have a solution for Python Flask as well. But we would like to support more frameworks in Python as well, along with Flask. So that's all. You can find the code. It is already open source and on GitHub. And you can find me today and tomorrow at the conference. So happy to chat everything about observability and reliability. Thank you.
All right. Who loves interviewing? That's a trick question. Nobody. I'm here to talk about why I hate SRE interviewing. This is actually a follow-up to my 2019 Lisa talk, 30 interviews later. Welcome to 30 more interviews later, AKA also contributing factor to my early retirement, 6 years in the field. It all started one day when I shitposted to Twitter that a 3-person on-call rotation is a bigger risk to the system than relying on a single AZ. Didn't let anyone reply to it because that needs no notes. And people really resonated with that in a way that I did not expect. And I thought, okay, I'm unexpectedly on the job market. Let's throw this out into the Twitter universe. I pitched myself. I said, hey, staff level. I was punching above my weight. We'll see. I also could explore management. I could talk to you about the difference between observability and monitoring. They are different. I will explain why. Incident response, the typical SRE things, facilitating practical hands-on learning sessions, remote collaboration, you know, the full package here, intern programs, evolved on-call rotations, write blog posts, I love Toxie Proxy. I'm a Swiss Army knife of reliability, and I can't wait to chat with you. You see how I ended up in marketing, right? I'm now yeah, and so I thought, okay, great, now I can get the offers, I can skip that whole interview process. No, I got instead many people saying, come interview. Come spend an hour of your time talking about what DevOps really means before we can even get into what we're trying to do. And it's no surprise that if you post onto the SRE subreddit, you are almost 5 times as likely to also post on the recruiting hell subreddit. This is a very fun open source project, and I thought, oh my God, nothing's changed in the last 4 years, or at least it didn't feel like it. What are we doing wrong? So if you are hiring, I've got some advice for you from my time interviewing at many companies. Oh, these 15 seconds, man. Okay. My least favorite part about technical interviews as an SRE is the how technical are you? Are you gonna give me Linux trivia? Are we gonna be pair programming? Could you just ask me like how to review a PR and what a good SLO is? One thing as well is no trash talking competitors. That actually happened at 3 of my interviews, and it was one of those things where I just said, nope, I like to compete with my products on merit. I like to compete based on our features and being the best in the business. Another thing, keep an eye on your recruiters. This is a real email that I got. In the red was all that I could see in my little preview. It's bedtime, candlelight bounces off the walls. Don't want to click that email, no thanks. And this is a paragraph that's basically like, hey, I would like to not have the, what does SRE mean for you? What does it mean for me? What does the company think it is? Where are you in the journey? Could you just write it down? And then maybe I'll figure out if I could apply. This is a real text I sent to my friends because I like to have options, interviewed at 3 places, had homework, 6 to 8 hour code challenges that were all due on the same day. And I did not make that deadline. So that was for hiring managers. If you are interviewing, here are some questions that my job search coach helped me out with. Got to think about what's important to you in the next role. It can totally be money. It can totally be, I want to go chase Rust. What are the things you like to do in your job, and what are the stuff that you want to get away from? The exemplars that I talked to, academia gave me in-interview feedback. Oh my God. Estee Lauder has a really cool rebate program, and Brex had the most fantastic recruiters that were so knowledgeable and sold me on the company. I am a former recruiting coordinator, which is why I have many feelings on this. I have written about it on my blog. You are very welcome to check it out, or come talk to me about how you also are tired of interviewing as an SRE. Thanks.